this climate change, we earlier in the previous hour, we actually report how London is right now. It's actually sunny. It's 25 degrees Celsius. But that's actually the positive end of it, right? And we've been seeing forest fires everywhere. We saw some in Turkey, in Greece as well, and California. They already have a wildfire season, so it's terrible. So also in Indonesia, flash floods have recently swamped some parts of Indonesia, including Bogor, East Nusa Tenggara, and Riau.
The disaster was due to extreme weather conditions and high precipitation.
And to get a better understanding of the changes brought about climate change, specifically here in Indonesia, we are now joined by meteorological climatologist and geophysics agency early warning chief Agie Wandala Putra. Agie, good afternoon.
Hello, good afternoon.
Agie, straight away, we're aware that our climate is changing, and we've seen so many reports of different new weather patterns, not just in Indonesia, but all around the world. How do we know that the rainy season here in Indonesia now has started? Because things seem to change all the time now.
Well, since the beginning of August, BMKG start to analyze the weather conditions in the current patterns that we had to analyze on the middle of the dry seasons. But we know that at the end of this year, we will start the rainy season is earlier. So maybe this will be really good news once, because I also heard on the conversations that forest fires are also the big concern for Indonesian's area. So this is a good news, because mostly we will have mostly rainy season in the western part and also the middle part of the Indonesia. But also when we're changing the climate situations from the dry to the wet seasons to the rainy season, of course we will have one conditions what we call as the transitions period, which is the transition period is on the beginning and also at the ending before we move to the dry season. So people need to be aware, because normally when we moving, when we shifting from the dry season to the wet season, this is the really special characteristic of the weather in Indonesia. So we will have the high precipitations with the really short durations of the rainfall. So what happened, we can see in the Bogor, in the Nusa Tenggara, and also in the certain province like also Kalimantan, we also really reached by the big flood in the middle, let's say it's like the dry season. So we can say that this is the transition period, and we will soon facing the rainy season at the end of the September.
So do you think the rainy season start has changed in the last couple of years, and now that it is starting to get into the transition period, how long once it starts will the rainy season last this time, and which regions do you think will begin experiencing it or will be most affected by it?
Yeah, this is the quite interesting topic, since the Indonesia is quite large area, but we can say as the normal period, we will have the 6 months of period of wet seasons or rain season, which is it's normally used to be start on the November. So it's going to be ending on the for the April next years. But this year we will start earlier, which is at the end of the September, October, and also November. In certain area will reach such kind of the amount of rainfall which is bigger than usual. And you're right that at the last of 2 or 3 decades in the past years, we know that the situation has changed quite often. And of course we still remember, like 2015 we have the El Nino period, and then the other years we have the La Nina periods. What the interesting is, this year we're not really conscious about the global situations phenomena, but like the last flash flood, it's happened because there are interactions of the local disturbance of the atmospheric. So maybe this is also another interaction of the climate change impact.
Obviously, the reason why we're talking about this is that because we want to be prepared, we want to brace ourselves, because again, the climate, certain places are experiencing extreme climate. Geographically speaking, which regions will face the worst conditions due to the impacts of extreme weather?
Okay, so if we talk about today, because the weather today is going to be quite interesting, because in the last 2 weeks we had a recent change because due to the two big tropical cyclone in the north area. So that's why the air mass in the Indonesian area just interactive with the low pressure in the north area. So if you're asking about the geographical of the impact of, let's say, the hydrometeorological hazard, so we need to focus at the end of this year in Java area, Java Islands, and also in the southern part of Sumatra and Kalimantan. Why? This is because the characteristic of the monsoon will come earlier. So it's going to be impacted in the Sumatra, Kalimantan, and also Java. But please do not forget also in Bali, it's going to be a bit different with the Nusa Tenggara Barat and also Nusa Tenggara Timur, because until today, even there is a flash flood in certain area, but we still have the area with the really limit dry without rain. Yeah, so this is quite interesting, and soon we will think that in the northern part will impact more than in the southern part in the next 3 months. So this is conditions that we will facing in the coming month.
Right. When we talk about Bali, Nusa Tenggara, and we're also probably talking about the potential of tourism out there. But before we go into that, Pak Agie, you may have heard of the news about Kampar in Riau province and in Ngada, East Nusa Tenggara. They recently suffered flash floods. Can you confirm that this was caused by heavy rain only, or can we say that this is caused by climate change that contributed to the disaster?
Right. So I would like to talk the first trigger of the flash flood event, or maybe landslide and another particular hydrometeorological hazard. We need to remember that the hazard impact is not just rely on the weather itself, but it's also the conditions of the vulnerability and also the exposure of certain area. So with these conditions, of course, we will see that the vulnerability is raising up years by years. But of course, in the same time, the data said, and also the data mentions, now the global climate is become warmer and warmer, and of course it's associated by the global climate change. But of course there are other reasons, like BMKG also measured that right now the number of the convective or the heavy rainfall event in Indonesia is more and more from the frequency perspective. So I can say that this kind of the conditions, maybe this is the part of the global climate change, but we need also having or taking care the conditions of the vulnerability and also exposure in our area. So we need to more care with our environment.
Okay, Pak Agie, we've seen extreme weather disasters in Indonesia, and in addition to landslides and flash floods, what else must we look out for should extreme weather return in the future?
Okay, I will talk on the shorten period and we'll make it more simple. So start from September to December, so we will frequently facing certain conditions. The first one is the flash flood, of course, and then the second one is going to be like landslide. And then the other one, we need to having concerns about the putting belum or small tornado and all, or water spot even, and the other one is the lightning and also thunderstorm. But then when we start the peak of the season, heavy rain seasons, we need to really concern about the flooding itself. So on January, February, and beginning of March, it's going to be a peak of the heavy rainfall period. So the urban area need to really concern and be careful with the threat of the flood itself. And in the long-term period of the May, we talk about the climate change itself. We can see from the data, the frequencies of the extreme event, like the tropical cyclone and also the heavy rain, is more frequent in the future and also more heavy. So this is the things that maybe we can facing in coming future, and more with the uncertainty in the weather conditions.
Okay, so you said flash flood, landslides, thunderstorm, and early next year we would be facing heavy rain early next year. But what advice would you like to give us to prepare for the wet season or the rainy season? Because of course everyone would like to be prepared for it.
Yeah, again, that I can mention that we still have time. We can prepare ourselves, our environment, our family, to ready with when the heavy rainfall coming. So we have the September, November, and maybe the beginning of December. We need to check our environment. We need to check the river. We need to check that are we on the area that really vulnerable with the threat of the landslide and flash flood. So we need to take more actions if we know about this kind of conditions to get more data from BMKG. You need to be more care with the alerting that BMKG release, and of course you need to also know how to evacuate when the disaster threat is coming.
Agie, thank you so much for the information on the monsoon season. We will certainly take notes because we have certainly heard a lot of extreme weather news from outside of Indonesia, so we are also getting ready for a change of season. This was very, very fruitful discussion. Have a great afternoon and please stay safe and healthy. Very interesting.
It's really good. I really appreciate Agie speaking to us because he actually, I think he really broke it down, in a very simple terms and how we can really prepare for it because there are so many things, so many terminologies there. We're talking about flash floods, landslides, tropical cyclone, thunderstorms. What does it mean, right? So he actually, I think he break it down from September to December, what kind of things we should prepare for, and from January, February, and March, that there's going to be a lot of,
heavy rain.
Living in urban areas, we should be prepared for the long rains that will, increase the floods, the regular floods will come to Jakarta.
I appreciate the fact that he warned us that this time it's coming earlier than before. It's actually coming in October because the monsoon transition has already started now. It's actually pushed forward to what usually is November, so pushed forward by a month, which means if the government is aware of this, they should start checking, as mentioned before, right? The rivers, the sewer systems and everything, the waste that is all the places and streets clean, just to make sure there are no unnecessary flooding or happening in the cities.
Yeah, and Agie also said Sumatra, Kalimantan, and Java would hit first and the worst. So I think we have to be ready too.
Right, because it's also, the weather is slightly different in eastern Indonesia because they're still experiencing the cooler winds from the south. It's very, very interesting how Indonesia is so big with so many different climate patterns, right?